Hospitality industry leaders in Scotland are warning that the temporary closure of pubs and restaurants across the central belt of the country could cost thousands of jobs. Licensed premises in 5 areas will have to close from Friday evening for just over 2 weeks. Elsewhere, opening hours will be restricted and indoor alcohol sales banned. The government says the new rules are needed to bring the virus back under control. I spoke to the Holyrood leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Ruth Davidson, this morning, and I asked her whether she supports that decision to introduce stricter restrictions.
We're supportive of the decision that there needs to be a further health measure. We recognise that that is what the evidence has been put to the First Minister and that she's taken that action. We are supportive of the fact that it's actually not the whole country, because there are 32 local authority areas in Scotland. There's a couple of them for whom there is a 0 R rating at the moment. They're doing very, very well. There's some that have got, an incident rate that's 200 times that. So there are discrepancies across the country. So the fact that it is a differentiated approach, we are supportive of that. One of the issues that we have with what's been put in place is that this is going to affect not just lives, but it affects livelihoods too. And this looks like back of a fag packet working, and there's going to be jobs lost, there's going to be businesses lost, and the support, we have a headline figure, but we've got no details of how it's going to be in place, how people can access the cash, what they're entitled to, whether they can plan for their business. And this is work that could have been done in all of these lost weeks that we've seen between the last local lockdown in Aberdeen and where we are now.
And so what are you asking for?
Well, it's not just us that's asking for it. So yesterday when I spoke to the First Minister, I took to her what the FSB, the Federation for Small Business, the largest membership organisation of businesses in Scotland, had said, which was the bare minimum. That was their words. The bare minimum we need is to have the details of the package brought out at the same time as the details of the restrictions. And that didn't happen. The Scottish Licensed Trade Association has called it cataclysmic. The CBI has said it's a crushing blow. UK Hospitality has said it's a total catastrophe.
OK, but just to be clear, you do,
but
you support it, but what? You support it only if there is...
We support measures that are taken to keep the public safe and to try and interrupt the flow of this virus. Now, what I don't have is the same information and briefing that the First Minister has. I don't have the suite of options put in front of me of, if we do X, this is the number of human contacts, person-to-person contacts that reduces. So if we do X and Y together, the number is this, but if we choose to do X and Z together instead, this is what we have. I don't have that information. So all of us are having to take on trust what the First Minister is saying about what's happening. And we've got to a point in Scotland, and, we've been very good, the First Minister has thanked the public, I've thanked the public, people right across the political spectrum have thanked the public for these measures that have hugely interrupted their lives, their livelihoods, etc. But we are getting to a point in Scotland where they now want more information, and they're not just going to give things on trust. They need to see the workings, if you like, rather than just a kind of diktat.
On exams, the decision has been made to cancel National 5 exams, which are equivalent to GCSEs in the rest of the UK. Is that a decision you support?
We were pretty sad to see that happen, and we had urged the Scottish Government to make taking exams what they were striving to do, because we just think that the kids here and elsewhere have been affected enough, and they need to have as close to a normal, if you want to use that word, school experience as they can. And we're pretty disappointed in that decision. I mean, yes, we will see some of the exam diet going ahead later to allow for a couple of weeks later than they ordinarily would. That seems sensible to us. But to cancel a whole suite of exams for a whole year group, no, that's not something that we're supporting.
Do you think ultimately it will disadvantage more students?
I think it will disadvantage more students. Now, don't let me suggest for a second that isn't a tough choice to make. We do understand that, but on balance we think that it would have been better, and we urged very strongly the Scottish Government to keep the exams on if it was at all possible to do so.
You are known as a one nation Tory. Is there a particular challenge for governments at the moment, for the government in Westminster, because the country isn't feeling like one nation as a result of COVID? There's a north-south divide, north including Scotland, although, of course, there is also a divide between nations. Do you think there's and, of course, I should say there's a divide between generations. Is it a particular challenge that the government needs to be acutely aware of?
I think because it's been primarily up until this point focused on public health, it's the first time people in England have noticed that there's different health services in the rest of the UK, because they don't come into contact with it that much, whereas people that live in the devolved administrations have always been much more acutely aware of what devolution is and how it works. But I think also the challenge here has shown that you need big, broad economic shoulders of the 6th biggest economy in the world to be able to support things like the furlough system. And I think that what people want to see, desperately want to see, is all of the administrations working more closely together in the public good.
OK, so why do you think it is that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has a personal approval rating of minus 50 north of the border, whilst Nicola Sturgeon's is plus 50?
Well, look, I mean, I know which one I would pick, and I'm maybe not in the majority in that, as you say, but I think as well, one, we've got our own press here. We've got we've got a First Minister who's daily on television and is being given an hour a day for the last 7 months, where she claims to talk in an unpartisan manner about what's happening, and frequently takes pot shots at the UK government that the BBC doesn't allow anyone to respond to. And I think that that's corrosive in nature. I think also that the Prime Minister was not an unknown force before he became Prime Minister, and I'm not sure that his poll ratings have changed that much, if I'm honest, because people thought that they already knew him before he was PM. I think part of it is the fact that he was also the kind of face of Brexit, which the majority of people in Scotland voted against. Sorry, majority of votes that were recorded was voted against, and these things are divisive.
On another matter, the First Minister has been asked about a meeting that she'd forgotten about with regard to Alex Salmond, where she had been told about allegations made against the former SNP leader. You, I know, have written to the SNP chief to ask for some answers. What are your concerns about what happened?
The idea that she had a meeting with the chief of staff of the person that had been in her job formerly to her, a colleague and friend of 30 years, her mentor, somebody that she describes in papers as the closest person to her outside of her own family, that she could forget that meeting. This is somebody with great powers of recall. She's a trained lawyer, I think, is stretching belief beyond breaking point. There is no way I would have forgotten it. There's no way I would have put it out of my mind.
Her?
There's no way. No, I don't believe her. I don't believe her. I believe that stretches credibility beyond all breaking point.
Ruth Davidson,